Yeah, shit. Much better. All right. Good morning. How y'all doing? My name's Gabriel Delgado Soto, and welcome to my channel. Just finished getting high, so I'm feeling pretty good. It's gonna mess with my head a little, but kind of enjoy it. It's kind of like practice training for me. It's kind of hard to figure out exactly what topic to talk about at this point in time. Mostly because everybody's coming here from a different point in time. You know, I myself am not the same man I was yesterday, and tomorrow I'll probably not be the same man. Things will have changed little by little over time. So, I guess a great place to start would be at the beginning. So I was born in Puerto Rico, and I think I stayed there. I moved around a little bit, they say, in my younger years. I can't really remember. But my father was in the military, so I expect it to be true. Around 7, actually around 5, Dad split. It's a core memory in my childhood, the splitting. Because I can remember before the splitting, the world was one big mess. I didn't understand any of it. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. But it was just one big mess. But that mess had a very safe core to it that was built off the image of two individuals when they split. It's like it tore asunder my world, and I began to question everything. Because there was no longer that safe core. I mean, my mom stuck around, yeah. But that initial was enough to get the whole thing going. Can't really remember when that happened, but it was pretty young. I do remember what happened. That was pretty funny. Maybe I'll tell a story about it one day. But I came to America, and I met up with an issue. In Puerto Rico, I kind of adjusted to the split, because everybody was of the same, what you would call, race, which technically doesn't exist. It didn't exist for me then. It wasn't until I arrived in America and I started noticing how different groups of people treat each other that I began to notice, let's say, racism in my own tribe. So I noticed it in other tribes first, and then I noticed it in mine. And I'm looking like, what the fuck is going on here? So I start checking around, I'm moving from tribe to tribe. Each one technically has the same flavor, but something else peppers it. So as a child, I was trying to figure out what was peppering these differences, because this was a big problem for me. I wanted to make friends, and I'm being told who I should make friends with, but something is telling me that's not correct. That's not the right way to go. So, I started going around talking to mad people. Got to know mad people. They gave me all kinds of advice, and everybody had their own idea of what was what. That was interesting for me to find that out, because you'd think it was just a tribal thing, but nah, it ended up being an individual thing. I mean, once you get down to the kernels of it, it was an individual thing. So at that point, I started thinking, okay, maybe there's this thing called cause and effect. And that's when I started paying attention to causes and effects. And one of the things I picked up was that depending on what it is you do in your life, like let's say somebody likes to play music. They're going to be good at music, they can explain music. They're not going to be good at other things, they're not going to be able to explain other things. And I started going through the categories of things that could be explained and things that could be experienced or learned about. And I was like, well, if each and every one of these is going to affect who I am as a person, as an organism, how I take in input, how I give out output, Well, I'd rather choose what's gonna go in than have other people just randomly dumping their shit. So that was like probably like around 9 or something. Of course, I did cave on one of my things. You know, I said I wouldn't smoke. And then, well, that's its own story. But I ended up smoking by the time I was 9. That's its own story. Yeah. And so I started studying real hard, you know. Started picking, like, you know what I did? In order to make sense of all the lies, I'd go through my daily life and I'd look at people. And if they said something and it rung true in life, I'd stick with that until it rung untrue. And then anything that someone said that I could automatically tell was not true, you know, I didn't argue with them about it. You know, that's their point of view. But I started cherry picking everything, man. Like everything. I was cherry picking. I was cherry picking for a reason. You know, sounds bad? Stay the fuck away from it. Sounds good? Check it out. Experiment with that. And I went through life like that, you know. And then by the time I hit the 7th grade, something weird happened. Because I was just, you know, from there it was just me trying to push a boulder up a hill. You know, there's this boulder, it's my knowledge. I'm trying to push it up a hill so I can get it higher and higher and higher. Obviously, you know, when I started out, I could only read for like 5-10 minutes at a time. You know, by the time I was in the 7th grade, I was like flipping through books like they were shit. You know, I could finish this textbook in like about 3 days. Like completely memorize the fucking thing. Unless it was math. Math always took a little longer. Math books, you really got to work to memorize those. But the other ones are all just symbolic. Once you learn, like, you pick up a dictionary, you learn all the words. Well, now that you know the words, you can pick up any book and just understand the motherfucker. Any words you find that you don't understand, you can always look up. You know? So reading books is actually a lot simpler than doing math. Once you get past the idea of, oh shit, I got to keep learning new words. You know? And I've got to keep putting definitions to those words, and those definitions cannot take on many shapes. So like with chemistry, you know, H2O, instead of having to think of a definition, you just have to picture the chemical composition of H2O. You know, and you place that as the definition of H2O. You know? There's lots of tricks when it comes to learning. You start picking up as you go along. But yeah, once you got the language down, as long as you have knowledge, a knowledge base in that language, then you can use that language to then cut through that knowledge base. Except for math. Again, math. Fucking math, man. Math is a bitch. I stopped the college algebra because that one's a motherfucker, man. You want to be able to like in and out that bitch? That's a motherfucker, yo. College algebra took me for a turn. All right. I stopped that when I think I was 15 or something. Yeah, that was just, what the fuck was that? But, you know, other books aren't like that, right? Other books, you can in and out them real quick. You know, you get all the meanings, you get all the metaphors, you get all the information. You suck that fucker dry and you just drop that bitch. Like, a thick-ass 400-page philosophy book, you start getting real good at it, take you 2-3 hours, man. 2-3 hours, you're going to smoke it the first time. But you gotta push the boulder up a hill and you start slow at first. You know, it's kind of like in the military. In the military, so I called it back when I was a kid too. I was like, you know, I think it works for the body too. And what works for the mind works for the body. What works for the body works for the mind. You know, I was like that. And they have these very rigorous training programs. And I'm thinking to myself, there should show up in that system a variation in the amount of damage that they're doing to the people that are undergoing it. Because, technically speaking, not everybody comes in. Like, I had family members, some of them were real big and heavy, and I wanted to go in the military. I'm looking at these training programs, I'm going, well, I could do it, but I'm pretty sure this motherfucker couldn't. But if he gets it in his head, this idea that he wants to try, and they gonna fuck him up. He ain't ready for that shit. You know, and you know, come to find out decades later and shit. Yeah, maybe that's just not the way it works. It took them a while to figure that out, but you know, they're starting to figure it out. You gotta come to people where they're at. Right? Don't try to push them past their point. Right? That's not how you teach. That's not how you exercise. That's not how you train. You know, you start with the small steps first. You start build. You gotta roll that boulder up the fucking hill. And first, you're gonna only roll it an inch. You let the bitch drop. You take a break. You know, you come right back to it. You try to roll it up just as long, if not a little longer. Don't try to roll it up lower. Always just as long, if not a little longer. As long as you keep that trend going, there's always growth rate occurring. Because that's how the brain works. You know, the brain isn't some crystallized format. It isn't, it's organic. It's constantly trying to change. It's like kind of like a computer. It's constantly trying to come up with its own programs to make the things it was doing easier to do. You know, it's always working for energy efficiency. And energy efficiency in real life translates to things become easier to do. So, you know, started rolling that ball up the hill. By the time I hit the 7th grade, they had this competition. A bunch of schools and shit were all going to compete with each other. Don't you fucking know, we start this competition and from fucking day one, I'm answering because there's like a whole bunch of subjects. I'm answering every fucking subject before my classmates, or my team, and before the other teams. Every fucking subject didn't matter. Math, science, history, you fucking name it. By the time I was done with that competition, it was like my fucking head blew open. Just exploded. Went everywhere. Because what it took to do that was it took me taking what I learned from martial arts and from playing video games, which was to enter into a flow state. And I had to apply that to my knowledge base. Holy shit, man. I was like, the greatest day of my life when I learned I could do that. I had learned about religions and I had an inkling of an idea at that point that they could have learned what I learned. But I wasn't so convinced at that point because I was looking at the effects too much. I was looking at the real world, listening to the priest, this and that. It was obvious nobody knew. So I was like, fuck it. Maybe, maybe not. But definitely not worth my time. Instead, I started studying more like genetics, physics, chemistry, really doubled down on all that shit. I was gonna learn as much as I could by the time I turned 16. Then when I turned 16, I was gonna go to college. I'd be like, fuck it. I had already dropped out of high school. You know, it's too slow for me. That's all it was. And they were politically biased. They weren't giving me the right history books. I'd rather have a clean history book than a cherry-picked history book. You know? It's just my thing. I didn't like that part. But, you know, eventually, I came up upon a man called Carlos Castaneda. Now, Carlos Castaneda is a weird motherfucker. He was an anthropologist. He studied fucking Native American traditions. And then he tried to take the temperature of the system in the fucking wrong way. But, you know, that happens. But he had to also come upon this in Native American traditions. And he postulated certain things in it about how to reach consensus, how to have a community experience, how to shift a person's point of awareness upon contact. You know, he had a lot of tricks he was trying to show off in this book. I'm reading this shit at 15, and that's when it hits me. We're all talking about the same fucking thing. Every fucking religion that ever existed, every shaman, every guru, regardless of where they are on that, you know, how far they've gotten that boulder going. And regardless, they're all aiming for the same fucking spot. You know? So I thought to myself, okay, let's keep reading this. And I found the things that I had not yet done. And I started focusing on those. So from 15 to 18, that's all I did. Until I achieved what he called, I forget, he called it facing a storm or something. Yeah, never come back the same. Yeah, definitely don't. So at 18, I completed what I like to call, since I like to look at this whole thing as a computer with software. So the mind is the software and the computer is the body, the brain, everything. Really, it's just a nervous system that has a spinal cord. But there is some part of this brain that's creating the impression I am, there is, everything, nothing. You know, it, all these things that can possibly be experienced and be noted, be aware of. Well, somehow the brain is using some portion of it to create that. But all the other portions of it that are not assigned to creating that are actually assigned to doing something else, which I guess many religions have found. I guess in the Christian faith it would be called Jesus Christ found it. So whatever state he reached, that's the state where the others reach. The Bodhisattvas were Buddhas and Arhats reach it. So it wasn't quite as singular as a position as it is in Christianity or in, most likely in all three of those, the Abrahamics. So the Jewish religion, the Christian religion, and the Muslim religion. All three of those reached this state. You're going to look at their books, you're going to be like, what the fuck is going on there? You got to keep in mind, some of them altered, some of them haven't. At the same time, depending on the context and situation, the guy's going to talk a lot like Socrates. He's going to be spitting words, and they're not really talking about anything above or below. They're just painting experience as they see it, and they're using words to do that. So yeah, when he says heaven and hell, he's talking about suffering and bliss. He's not talking about above or below. I know everybody else, when they write it down, since they have no other way to write it down, and there isn't a system complex enough in their time period, their age, their point in history, to encapsulate such a thing. Well, at that point, yeah, you can see why they would write books and then all this shit would happen. But no, they're all reaching the same place. They're all at the same point. I call it the point where they become a super genius. They each have their way. So that also shows to me that it doesn't just take studying. Because, well, I had that anyway, because martial arts is where I landed first. Then video games. Then, books. So it's like, okay, really we're just hitting the same point. So I like to call, mind wine. And the overlaying structure of mind that creates mind, we'll call that cup. So there's wine in a cup, because that's what life is. It's like a bunch of wine. You're trying to turn it into water. You can do that. When it turns to water, it's going to turn back into wine anyway. It's just what it is. Well, you can try. Because in the trying, you can learn a lot of things. You gain a lot of insight. And it is that insight that's going to help you through the rest of your life. So how does that look like? Well, different faiths have different ways of going about it. I believe in Christianity, you actually have to finally attribute heaven and hell to your own life, and then do a complete recollection of your life, and then take insight from how you had to navigate God's presence in order to finally arrive at the real church, which is just life, the church. So I think their path goes that way. I haven't read the Muslims, so I can't really say too much about that, and I haven't read the Israelis, so I can't really say too much about that. But from what I've heard, pretty much similar paths for the most part, except for, there's differences in how. Because some of them might be more inclined to lean towards meditation. Recollection, obviously, was more of a self-inquiry thing. At one point, the Christians may have done meditation, but they did eventually move on to self-inquiry. At least from the looks of it. Obviously, no one knows what it is that they're really pointing to, because it's hard to point to something. It's like your mind. You're stuck inside a brain. And you have to figure out you're the brain itself. Well, that's going to be pretty fucking tricky because there's a lot of self-reference issues you have to overcome first. You know? And that issue, self-reference, comes up in many different paradigms. It'll come up in math with the incompleteness theorem and this and this and that. You know, it's just there. You know? There's a self-reference issue. That's why we, as scientists, so they figure out this, this way of looking at the world and thinking. The other scientists have what's called the scientific method. They have yet to figure out how to do this. So they need a rule book to keep them in check. But from here, yeah, you test everything. It's kind of the same thing, but not really, because they're veering towards this point where they want to drop falsifiability. And in my world, that would be a big no-no. You can't drop falsifiability because I live off experience. That's pretty much like saying we can think of something outside of experience. And it's like, fuck you, bitch. I stay in my circle. You stay in yours. Fuck off. Don't fuck with me. I am not doing unfalsifiability. I do falsifiability. Where's the fucking evidence? All right. Anyway, that was my little rant. But, they can do their thing. But, it takes a long time for a species to even get to the point where it's able to realize it exists as a thing itself. That can take a long time. It's taking us a long time. Heck, we're just barely getting there. I mean, obviously, you got your various, you say gurus, spiritual leaders, or teachers, coaches, consultants around the world. You encapsulate all these into one idea. Someone who has reached this state and is just going about doing something with it. Helping people get here. In whatever form it takes. These people, they're good at what they do. Don't get it twisted. They're great at what they do. But they're also going to have a hard time through the self-reference issue. There's just no way around it. So actually asking any of us, teachers, to get to that portion from the inside is like, dude, do you even know what the fuck you're talking about? We can't reach that far. We can reach far. We can get into subtle levels of conscious awareness. We can't reach that fucking far. Instead, what it comes to us as is a spontaneous arising of the self. It is an experience. It is not a concept. It is not a thought. It is an auto-correction moment by moment. I've heard, there's this old guy named Shinzen Young. Fucking kick-ass martial artist, that one. And he goes and tells me, what does he say? Man, you gotta love this weed. I just lost my train of thought. I know I was talking about the thing itself. What did he say about it? He said so many things about it. Yeah, that guy's good. Pretty much he's pointing to it every time. Anyway, what was I? So, all these gurus, all these teachers, and us, we can't do that. We need scientists because they're able to do sonification or EKGs. Obviously, when corpses die, they can dissect, open, and look to see, like in certain disease states, certain parts of the brain will decay. And okay, they know what the disease was when it was killing the person. Now they want to know where it is and what it was doing, so they can learn how to counteract that. So that's cool. So they open it up and they look and they go, looks like it was started here, spread here, spread here, spread here, spread here, and they figure shit out. They can figure out the shit we can't figure out from the inside. We can't come to explain that. But there is. That's why. By the time I was 15, because I've been studying all these other physics, chemistry, I finally decided on a topic before I ended up with Carlos Castaneda's book, and then I had to do a full 180. Fucking shit. But I picked geneticist Because to me, in the end, if I wanted to figure out what it was that was, I guess, Plato would say, no, not Plato, Socrates would say that there was a voice inside of him, a voice of wisdom. And I wanted to figure out what that voice of wisdom was. So I was going to go into genetics because, yeah, I could go into neuropsychology, neuroscience, and all that. But really, all that can be done by someone else. I want to go for the book itself, the one that crafted the entire fucking organism. From just a bundle of fucking cells. I was like, son of a bitch. How do you do it? You're the architect in my book. Because, yeah, there's the wine, there's the cup. And then there's the architect. Who made the wine? Who made the cup? There's a room. I don't think anyone made the room. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I respect it. Don't try to force it on me, though. Like, talk to me about it, cool. But if you try to use love to then say, if you love me, you must do this. No, I'm going to look at you like you just fucked up. Like I did with my aunt just a couple days ago. Well, I didn't look her in the eyes, though, because, when she sees the eyes and she sees us on blinking, it's like, fuck. He really does believe that shit. I'll leave her with a little hope. Maybe somewhere down the line, it could possibly happen. But let's face it, not for me. I've been here since I was fucking 8. I mean, shit, I'm 42. I haven't changed since. I'm not going to change now. But I can see their world. Don't get it twisted. I have no problem with your world. I see it. But that's because I can be open to it. Just don't try to attack me through that love. Because I thought your God was... That's why I can open to it. I can open to it. I see it differently, but I can open to it. But then, if you use its name and come in with love to try to change my position, it's almost as if the thing itself is trying to attack me. And at that point, I might feel like just knocking it out. So, yeah, just don't do that. Talk about it. Love it to death. Love it to death. Do not try to love me to death. The only thing I know is I'm gonna die. Beyond that, I don't really know much. It's an experience I can't talk about. Kind of like multiverse theories. Yeah, sure, you can come up with all the multiverse theories you want. But unless you can actually find evidence for it, that isn't born of extrapolation, I bet you we can't do that in reality. It's probably one of the reasons why Einstein... So, there could be multiverses. But as far as Einstein was concerned, there was no way to prove that. So we just stopped looking. We're looking here. In reality, the universe. And there could be subtle effects. Like, let's say there are multiverses. Obviously, they would have subtle effects on each other. How to find those? Who the fuck knows? I know we're not in an age where we can even think of doing that. But at the same time, it's like, is that really the most important thing we should be doing with our fucking limited resources right now? I mean, how hard is it to get funding in the first place? How would you just focus on the shit here? Don't get it twisted. I love theory. You can keep a little bit open for that. But not everybody has to want to be a theoretician. Not everybody has to be made to want to win the Nobel Prize. That's not the position we should be glorifying here. The position that we should be glorifying here is the applicators. The ones who are taking that shit and making something with it. There's plenty of shit to test here. Magnets, rocks, species. You ever study ants? I've seen a lot of people who study ants. They've gotten a lot of fucking information from that. I've seen people studying bees. They've gotten a lot of information from that. I've seen people studying, magnets. They've gotten a lot of information from that. Motherfuckers right now trying to study black holes. Got all kinds of telescopes. That's cool as shit. That's something to aim for. Because it's here. Now, once our science gets more, then the allocation of resources for multiverses makes sense. Because at that point, we're starting to take care of our own shit. We kind of have an understanding what the fuck is going on in our universe. It's kind of like clean up your house before you go outside. Like that. It's So understand what the fuck is going on here first before you understand what the fuck is going on out there. And however, those subtle, they're not really going to be all that. Those should appear as just small rationals anyway. Just leave them to the side. We'll get to them later. But that doesn't mean, I think, I'm just saying, it's my personal opinion. Then again, my mind's always working towards an attempt at efficiency. So it always looks at all systems and then goes, what's the most efficient path? What's the most efficient method? Man, I keep talking all day about other things. But 30 minutes, 45 seconds, I think we've taken up enough of your time. It is a beautiful day. I'm going to go smoke another blunt. And I'm going to try to make a beautiful day out of it. I understand it's not going to be the same way for everybody else. This is what I'm going to say. They're stuck on the wine. They don't see the cup. If you ever get to a point where you're looking at the world from where I'm looking at it and you're going, okay, what the fuck is wrong with everybody? That's the same world you just came from and entered my world from. You were there. Unless you were like me. You were there. You know? You went from being a child, a genius, and then became entrapped in a worldview. You created a self to navigate this worldview. You know? And it was based off the interactions of the world as it is, through cause and effect, born into existence, moment by moment. This whole causal nexus point. Nexus point? It's a nexus point. You know? Because if you look around, you know, most of what's actually occurring in the world is a direct result of history. And our inability to overcome history. Take, for instance, Karl Marx. Karl Marx wrote a fucking book. That's all he did. Wrote a book. And then he didn't take any positions, if I'm not mistaken. He just outlined 3 positions that one could take. He said there's the position of communism, the position of socialism, and the position of capitalism. That alone, just introducing a concept so fucking advanced to humanity, it itself was alone enough to almost trigger World War III. So you gotta think about it. It's like with Planet of the Apes. You ever seen Planet of the Apes? I feel like Jay and Silent Bob. You ever seen Jay and Silent Bob, the silent movie? I feel like Jay and Silent Bob. I'm coming up in here. It's Planet of fucking Apes here. You introduce an idea and they all go fucking nuts. You know, so you gotta be careful how you introduce big ideas in this world. Because Karl Marx showed it. Heck, Obama, when he took office, he split the fucking sea. All of a sudden, Americans that were united were separated. I saw him split the sea. Wanna know how I saw it? Because it happened to me before. I already knew that was gonna happen. When he was trying to take the podium, I was like, dude, man, there's gonna be a split. There's gonna be a split. I fucking called it, man. Fucking called it. I love that shit. But I've done that before in my life, you know. And the way it's done is that if you become the most virtuous person in the room, everyone's gonna gravitate to you. But if you are the most virtuous person in the room and you try to take up the position of, like, let's say, Christ, then one half of the room will go the other way. And the other half of the room will gravitate towards. So I've done that a couple of times in my life. That's why I knew it. The minute he was going to become president, I was like, dude, man, this is the same thing that happens to me. You know that spot they reserve. And if it's a reserved spot, there's going to be a reaction when it changes. I don't know what the reaction will be, but now we know. Hell, Trump took center stage quick and fucking proud. He was like, fuck it. I'll be the vanguard. Oh, like, holy shit. One of my boys was like, dude, man, you should just Jesus Christ their ass. And I'm like, nah, man, we got to see this through to the end now. Because otherwise, you know, I'm just talking shit out of my head. It may or may not have happened the way it did. But shit, man, I never thought he'd try to take over the fucking White House. Holy shit. And the motherfuckers are cheering him on, yo. I'm like, fuck it, man, yo. You know what? Maybe I will come up with a YouTube channel. I'm gonna start talking on this shit. It's time I got out the hood. All right, y'all be easy, all right? Peace.